Hello everyone, welcome back to RotoViz Overtime on RotoViz Radio, brought to you by Blue Wire. My name is Colm Kelly. You can follow me on Twitter at Overtime Ireland, and I'm delighted to be joined on today's show by Conor O'Driscoll, FFPC Best Ball Champion from 2021. He's hoping to do it again in 2022. We'll see how it plays out. We recently drafted in the Best Ball Mania 3 together, Conor. Hopefully we can take that down as a co-managed team. Really had a lot of fun doing that draft. You can follow Conor on Twitter at DrecoOut. Conor, how are you feeling as we get ready to jump into your latest article up on RotoViz.com? It is LateRound QB Dead. We're going to talk about using some of the tools of how to maximize that. We may even refer back to that draft that we recently done as well to give people some insights into our strategy there.
Hey, Colm, thanks for having me on. Like always, these are lots of fun to do. Enjoy talking with you and enjoy these shows. So I appreciate you bringing me back on again.
No worries. The feedback, as I mentioned on the other shows, has been awesome. Great to, we love reading your work on the website, and I love talking to people who I have fun talking to. So we're on a roll with both of those things. So we are going to talk, as I mentioned, about the quarterback position today. We often talk about the quarterback window. You're talking about is QB Dead. We link in the quarterback window as well. What were some of your thoughts, I guess, going into the article, and then what were some of your key takeaways after you had done the research and we're ready to publish this?
So obviously, the results for the quarterback window when you use the roster construction explorer, it's all about get your two QBs between round 6 and 12, and so I guess that was kind of like my base expectation, but you, like we talked about a lot, it's an ADP game. Like, you want to be able to react to the landscape that is presented to you, not the one that you're used to. And so you look at some of these ADPs, and I guess just to throw it back to historical, because like the article is called "Is Late Round Quarterback Dead?" And when late round quarterback was kind of like originated. It wasn't originated in 2015, but this is kind of like something that I noticed in the ADP in 2015. Basically, Cam Newton in his prime was going like alongside Matt Ryan and 63 picks after Aaron Rodgers. And so that's just, to me, that's like an example of just how inefficient the market used to be at picking these quarterbacks. And when you use the kind of historical data on Win the Flex, and you kind of like tune into 2015 through 2019, the tool actually said that the expectation when you drafted a quarterback then was that they're going to finish outside the top 12. So we were so bad at picking quarterbacks. You take your second round, your third round quarterback, the chances were they're going to finish outside the top 12. And so that really is an ideal kind of scenario for late round quarterback. But when you look at today, it's just a much different picture. You look at Lamar Jackson, who in the range of outcomes app, most of his kind of closest comps are Cam Newton, and then Mahomes, most of his Patrick Mahomes, most of his are Aaron Rodgers. So you kind of get it's kind of a messy comparison, but the fact that they actually Lamar Jackson is going ahead of Mahomes today, and he did in the draft that we did recently, just goes to show how much more efficiently drafters are kind of selecting these quarterbacks. And so it really sets up this stage where you have to pay for points. And 2021 was a great example of that, with lots of huge league winners from the first eight rounds. And then when there were misses, they were small, despite a few injuries to some key stars at quarterback. So that really shifts things up. Like, it's showing that you have to pay for quarterback points.
What I was going to say is when you look at both fantasy football and how people are, again, I keep coming back to this, people are getting smarter, they're reading more content, they're getting better content, the information being shared on a wider scale is always improving. So people are getting much, much better at adjusting to ADP. When we look at the NFL in general, you mentioned Aaron Rodgers and Patrick Mahomes. So obviously there's comparisons there. But when we look at the likes of Cam Newton, he was I guess we'll say a unicorn when he was playing that way, 7-8 years ago. Now we do have, a lot of rushing upside in these quarterbacks. I think that was the biggest adjustment for people was people who, the rushing ability of a quarterback leading to fantasy points. For example, this year we're talking about Trey Lance, and I still think Lance is undervalued, but the rushing upside is massive. Justin Fields, the rushing upside is massive. Really, I think when the real breakthrough came was with Josh Allen and his rushing upside to change things. We talk about the Konami code, for example, and how that has changed the landscape. So people have become much smarter at fantasy points isn't just how many touchdowns the quarterback scores, it's the amount of rushing yards, the amount of rushing upside. And what we've seen is the likes of an Aaron Rodgers or Peyton Manning would have went in those early rounds, 8-9 years ago, whereas now you mentioned the likes of Lamar Jackson is going to head off the equivalent in Patrick Mahomes. So the landscape has really changed in both the NFL and how quarterbacks are playing the game, and also then how people are drafting. And again, that just comes down to more information, more smarter drafting, and better than ADP because of that. And we talked on the recent show about how the running back dead zone is kind of changing or evolving. And again, it's a similar thing. People are just getting better at evaluating where the player should go.
Yeah, and I think one thing about that, one aspect that kind of strikes me a little bit, is that it used to be people would imagine how good is this quarterback, or how much do they fit what I picture a quarterback to be. Like
the prototypical quarterback, I guess we'll say.
Exactly. The old school prototype quarterback.
Ben Roethlisberger.
Yeah.
Blake Bortles fed into that for a while.
And it was like they kind of substituted that in place of asking themselves the question, okay, how many points can this player score? Whereas now we're much more razor sharp focused on how much points are they going to score. Even Justin Herbert, who is kind of like of the elite guys, he's probably one of the closer comparisons to the elite guys of yesteryear. He still has some rushing upside, and he has shown this propensity to be able to put up huge amount of passing touchdowns too. So he's probably the one where of all those elite guys, you're probably live for the least amount of rushing points, but still much more than, say, Peyton Manning.
And then when we look at that, obviously we're talking about how people are getting smarter. The question here is late round quarterback being dead, but the first part of that is how has the quarterback window, I guess, changed. We talk about the quarterback window in that last draft, although it wasn't what we intended doing going in and drafting back-to-back quarterbacks. We did draft Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow. How has that quarterback window changed over recent years?
I mean, it has to creep up, right? The better drafters are at knowing which quarterbacks they need to draft, the earlier you need to select them to get the points that you need. Obviously, that there's like an ADP constraint on that. If we got really good, but they were all going in the second round, well, then late quarterback is probably alive and well. But I think to generally speaking, the ADPs of where quarterbacks go relative to a few years ago, relative to other positions, is the same. We're just much better at knowing who those guys are, and so you just have to be willing to take them. And so we got Patrick Mahomes in round 5, and I think maybe 5 years ago, Patrick Mahomes, we were talking about the archetype quarterback. He's probably a round 2 or 3 guy.
Oh yeah, yep.
And so to get him in round 5 is great. I obviously have fond memories of Joe Burrow winning me that best ball tournament. And so getting him in I think it was the late 6th round, and he's obviously a superstar, like pure superstar, where he's one of the most accurate, aggressive quarterbacks in the league. Last year he had the knee injury, but apart from that, he's also been very mobile. He's also somebody who's live to give you points on the ground, and you don't get that. don't get that kind of ceiling access later. And so we obviously we paid for it with probably a weaker wide receiver core, but we definitely feel strong about having huge ceiling at quarterback that just not a lot of teams are going to have. And we also did it in a way that we were able to fill out our wide receivers. Like, we waited till round 5, so we still have a very palatable grouping at every position, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree. And in that particular draft, things worked out after. When we made that pick, I did ask you the question about the confidence of how things would play out. But again, using the rest of our structure and, being used to drafting, and I talk about drafting back to front, we were able to pair all that together to hopefully make a roster that will have some success this year. We'll see how all of it plays out over the course of the coming months. Late round quarterback, then, that takes us to this point. I also think that while for example, in best ball specifically, we're talking about best ball when we're looking at this, obviously, as a best ball show, but the top end quarterbacks have come down a little bit from the likes that you mentioned off, say, at the time, Pitt and Manning and Aaron Rodgers, but also the guys then that are who would have been late round quarterbacks potentially have now moved up. So they're probably going in the 9th, 10th round range. With that in mind, is late round quarterback from that perspective dead? Can you still go with one of those guys maybe in the 10th and then pair it up? Or do you think then the other thing I take into consideration with the late round quarterback element of best ball is, does that then affect the structure and make it a 3 quarterback team versus a 2 quarterback team, and the opportunity cost of having that extra position for quarterback on your roster? But how are you feeling overall about late round quarterback, obviously specifically in best ball in 2022?
I think one of the big contextual elements is that, and we've talked about this before, whereas wide receiver dries up so much faster than ever before. On Underdog, we're like, okay, well, they start to underproject the running backs after round 3, and obviously it only goes, it widens from there. And so if you were going to use a late round quarterback strategy, the benefits that you're getting at other positions, like, for example, wide receiver, are just much lower than they were before because the ADPs have moved up. So you're trying to, I guess, if you're trying to look at the 2v2, you're not getting as much of a benefit from your wide receiver, for example, and you're getting absolutely killed at quarterback. And then when you look at our team, because we were able to stop at 2 quarterbacks, 2 tight ends, we were able to add an extra skill position. And that's just another bullet that helps us fill up our 6 wide receiver, running back flex spots. And I think you mentioned something interesting there, whereas the guys who would have been around 12, maybe 13 picks are now reaching up. And so you have to react to that. Those guys are still great picks in round 9 or 10 or 8, and you still want them. But I really think that the new sort of window is probably rounds 5 through 10 more than stretching to 12. Like, you can still get, like, I guess, a Kirk Cousins later, but again, you're giving up so much at the position.
So when we look at it as well in the article, which will be linked in today's show notes, you have added in as well the win rates above and below expectations for your QB2 and snake draft format. And I think obviously that fits into the window as well. Picking it before round 9 is the optimum between 7 and 9. So again, that has moved up as well. So it all pairs together. But when we look at it, what are some of the other key areas that you think for playing quarterback this year is vital? I haven't, to be honest, if I have a late draft slot and it's been mainly in Superflex, I have done this where I've kind of punted the quarterback position. But when we're playing in the best ball tournaments, I haven't done a lot of, punting quarterback. I've been getting those guys in the window. Is there any other ways for you to play it, or do you think we really just need to get those 2 guys in the window to have the optimum roster?
I mean, when late quarterback did work, it was because the rushing guys were undervalued. And so I think that if you are to punt quarterback, the best guys that you should be approaching are probably players that rush more often than the kind of like average. So you're probably talking like, let's say, a Daniel Jones who is live to rush a lot. You just don't know if he is still going to be in the seat at the end of the season. And so that's another risk that is, I think, big with the later round quarterbacks, is that they're much less likely to last throughout the season. You're honestly taking that kind of risk on almost with whoever you pick late. And so you may as well pick players who, if they do last, they have the rushing upside. So probably someone like Daniel Jones and Marcus Mariota, that sort of player is who I would be targeting late if I did it, but I don't generally do that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And again, the part that I mentioned about the build overall kind of puts you into that 3 quarterback build again, so you're losing out in that position. So there's a whole lot of balance to have into it. But another very good piece by Conor up on RotoViz.com. Of course, you should be following Conor if you aren't doing so already on Twitter at Drickout. That is DRICOOUT. Let's get him to 1,000 follows before the start of the NFL season. That's my goal for 2022. We'll see if we make it there. If you do wish so, you can follow me on Twitter at Overtime Ireland. And of course, if you are looking to sign up for a RotoViz NFL Pass, go to rotoviz.com/podcast for more information. Or when you are checking out on the website with a 1-year RotoViz NFL Pass, you can use the code RVRadio2022 to get yourself that 10% discount and get access to all of the content and tools up on the website, including pieces by Conor himself. But that is going to do it for this episode of the show. My name is Colm Kelly, as I mentioned. My co-host on today's show was Conor O'Driscoll. Until we're back with another episode, have a good one.